Good morning, Mount Olive family and friends. It's Friday morning once again, and time for our Friday devotion. We have picked out a topic this week, and that being anxiety. And probably, as Brother TJ and all the rest of them have said, it's been a very good topic for the time that we have been in. There has been a lot of anxiety starting back in March when all this pandemic started, and it's still continuing. So, it's something that every one of us is having to deal with, everyone dealing with it in their own special way. So let's go ahead and I'll start sharing my screen with you, and we'll go over this. So I have Psalm 16, verse 8 is our verse for Friday, and it says, "I have set the Lord always before me, because He is at my right hand. I shall not be moved." Anxiety affects everyone. That's something that none of us can get away from. It affects everyone else in some capacity, but the severity level differs from person to person. And I felt this little cartoon of Charlie Brown, and Charlie Brown says, "My anxieties have anxieties," and wonder about Charlie Brown, what anxieties that he has. Was it whether the next time he goes to play football with the gang, if Lucy is going to pull the football out from under him again, and he goes flying through the air. He backs up to kick a long kick, and she keeps promising that she's not going to pull it away from him, and he knows that she will, but he has that anxiety. Or is he sitting up thinking about that little red-haired girl, that he had he was very fond of, but he could never get up that courage to go over and speak to her. But she was always on his mind, but he had that anxiety about going over and speaking to her. He had the Valentine card and everything, but he never did make it over. So, poor Charlie Brown. That's the way some of us are too, aren't we? So some anxiety issues that, we have is some people have issues taking a test. Now, whether that test be in school or college or at work, or whether it's taking a test at a doctor's office or at a lab or at at an x-ray facility, or some diagnostic center, we are real apprehensive, and we have anxiety about taking that test. Some people, especially now, have anxiety issues about being in a large crowd. Some had, before all this, they had issues about being in a crowd, but now especially, they have some really strong issues. Some people have anxiety issues about financial issues, whether they're going to be able to make, the next month's rent. So that's some anxiety issues. Or some have some health issues. Now whether those health issues are actually, true health issues, people have anxiety over, or people can have anxiety issues over health issues that they think they have, that they don't know where they have or not. But, they hear someone having a certain health issue, and then before long they think, well, maybe I have that issue. So those are those types. We have workplace issues, whether, we're going to have a job, the next week or the next month, with all this stuff going on, or, issues with our boss, or issues with our coworkers, those types of workplace issues, anxiety issues about upcoming projects that we have to complete, deadlines that we have to meet, those kinds of anxiety issues. And we have personal relation issues, whether it be with, husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, whether it be with family, our children and parents, all kinds, or personal relationships with people that we work with, or, those kinds of things. And then we can have anxiety issues with unknown causes, that they're just, anxiety issues that people have, and they really don't know why. They're just unknown. And people can even have anxiety issues over their salvation, that, whether they're actually saved or not. And, are they really saved? Did they, and they're afraid that they're going to die. And if they die, they're going to go to hell. Those are all, valid anxiety issues that people have. These are issues that people face every day, and and the pandemic has only added to that anxiety, and that's why Pastor TJ, he's decided to address this topic this week in our devotions. It's our desire and our prayer that God will bless these and use these devotions to touch the lives of all of you and out there who may be dealing with anxiety and these types of issues. And we pray that God will use his word to speak to your heart and strengthen you. So let's look at what God says today. So Psalm 16, verse 8 says, I have set the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand. I shall not be moved. Now, I have underlined two words here, set and always. If we look up set in the dictionary, it's a verb. It's defined as to put or lay or stand something in a specified place or position. Or it could be to put or bring into a specified state. So, what David is saying here, that he has actively made an effort to set or place or stand God always at all times in front of him. Why? Why would he do that? So that all of his attention, all of his perspective, all of his outlook, all of his filter, all of his view will always be through God. By doing so, his life will be shielded from the things of the world and will be much more blessed and calm. The problem we run into is if we are trying to let the world in, or we're pursuing money and social standing and all these anxieties and ambitions and cares and sorrows and duties and responsibility, will push him out of our minds and our hearts. So we won't have him in front of us. So, that's the problem that we have today, that, a lot of us aren't doing what David did. David set God right in front of him. So, everything that came to David from the world was filtered through God. So some notable people who took their eyes off God. Now, this is a list of people that I came up with who took their eyes off God and what happened to them. So Adam and Eve. They took their eyes off of God, and they looked at a tree and its fruit. And what happened? They sinned. And they lost not only Eden, which was the perfect place to live, but they lost their close fellowship with God. Now, and this is just me, it doesn't say this in the Bible, but, by the serpent tempting Eve, and saying, well, God just doesn't want you. This is the tree of knowledge and of good and evil. So, surely he didn't tell you couldn't eat that. But, maybe he was just trying to make her feel less than God, because she didn't know good and evil. And God did. She didn't know that, by doing that, by eating of that tree, and her knowing good and evil would take away her innocence, and and it would be sin. And then poor Adam, he he really loved Eve, and maybe this is just John talking. Maybe that he had the anxiety of fear of losing Eve. So maybe that's what happened. So both of them took their eyes off of God, and look what happened to them. The next one was Lot's wife. She took her eyes off of God and what he said, and she turned around and looked back at Sodom. They were coming. Lot and his wife and 2 daughters were coming out of Sodom. God, the angels let them out, and God told them, he sent them off in their direction. He said, "Don't turn around. Don't look. That's behind you. What I've set before you. Don't look around." And lo and behold, she turned around. She was and was turned into a pillar of salt for disobeying God. Now, Lot's wife, she was anxious over the loss of all that she had back in Sodom. She had, there are some commentators that Lot could have been in a very high position in Sodom, and so here was that loss of her status in the community and all of her belongings, and so she just couldn't deal with that, and she had to turn and look one last time, and her anxieties got so much, took control of her so much that she had to turn, and she looked at one last time, and she was turned into a pillar of salt. And the Israelites, they took their eyes off of God and His promise of the land that He had chosen for them, and they believed the 10 spies instead of Joshua and Caleb. And so what happens to them? They wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. The Israelites, they were anxious after they heard the words of those 10 spies said that, oh, there's giants in the land, and the people there, well, they're numerous, and they're like grasshoppers. There's so many of them, and their cities are well fortified, and so they became afraid. They became afraid to go. Their anxieties took over, and even though God had told them, He said, "Go, and I will go before you," but they allowed their anxieties and their fears to defeat them, and because of it, they wandered in the wilderness 40 years, and all of those who wouldn't go in, died in the wilderness. So, that's another thing. And the next one is Brother Jody's favorite person, and that is Peter. Peter took his eyes off of Jesus as he was walking to Jesus on the water. And what happened? Peter sank like a rock. Peter became anxious about his surroundings. He looked, and he's out in the middle of the water, and these waves are dashing on each side of him, and he's thinking, "Oh my, what have I done?" And I could maybe lose my life. So even though he had asked Jesus, he said, "Beg me to come to you." And Jesus said, "Well, come on." Well, he took Jesus' word until he took his eyes off of what Jesus had told him. He took his eyes off of Jesus, started looking around him, became anxious of what he saw, and he sank. And Jesus, was there to pull him out. So let's look at some notable people who fixed their eyes on God. Let's look at the other side. Let's look at Noah. Noah fixed his eyes on God and listened when God told him to build an ark because God was going to destroy the whole earth, by a flood. So Noah, he saved his family by doing this. Now Noah had never seen an ark, and he had definitely never built one. So, but he wasn't anxious over that. You know why? Because God gave him the plans, and he believed God. He was the object of public ridicule every day. Every day they would come by, like, "Oh, it's not rain. What are you talking about? What is that you're building?" But Noah wasn't anxious. He stayed focused on God. So when the rains came and the waters began to rise, Noah wasn't anxious about that either, because God told him to go into the ark. God shuts the door and seals him and his family in the ark. Next one, Abraham. Abraham fixed his eyes on God when God told him to leave his country for a country that God had for him. So we know what happened. Abraham became the father of a great nation. Now, Abraham wasn't anxious about going to a new country because he knew God had told him to go and that God would be with him. So he wasn't anxious about that. He kept his eyes fixed on God. And even though he made some mistakes along the way, he knew where his hope was. Number 3, Moses. Moses fixed his eyes on God, and he followed God's word to go to Pharaoh and tell him to let God's people go. And what happened with Moses? Moses led the children of God out of Egypt. Now, Moses tried to have anxiety when God told him to go to Pharaoh and, and tell him to let the children of Israel, go. But, Moses, he kind of like, well, God, I really don't speak that well. I really don't speak that well. And, I'm slow tongued and everything. And God said, I'll take care of that for you. I'll send your brother Aaron with you. So, God will help us if we will just, if we'll just reach out to him, God will help take care of that situation. And number 4, Paul fixed his eyes on God after being blinded on the road to Damascus. And what happened for Paul? Paul was the evangelist to the Gentiles, and he wrote most of the New Testament. And I put Paul here because Paul's really is an example of the type of person we should strive to be. Paul tells us, really to be content in whatever state we're in. And, Paul was a very special person. He went through a lot of things that, you and I probably, I know we'll never go through. But, it was something that if we look back on his life, Paul went through much more than what we'll ever go through. And he tells us, he says in his word, when he wrote, he said, be content in whatever state that you're in. So what was the difference in the two groups? One group, they looked at the things of the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. They lost sight of God. And the second group set their eyes on God, and they were able to do great things for him. So the question is today, which group do you want to be in? Let's go back to our verse, and I underline, because he is at my right hand. In the Bible, the right hand is mostly regarded as a position of honor and dignity. We know that, John said he saw, and Stephen, when he was being stoned, said he saw Jesus, at the right hand of God. And, and John in Revelation that, Jesus at the right hand. So it's mostly regarded as a position of honor and dignity, but it's also regarded as a position of defense and protection. To have someone at our right hand is to have someone there who is near to us to protect us. And that's where the term come, your right hand man, that's that protection that we get. So David was saying that he felt God was always near him and readily available for his defense. And, we can have that same confidence that David had if we want it, knowing God is right there for us, that he is not very far away, that he, assures us that we have his protection and that he is always looking out for us. And the last one, it says, I shall not be moved. There's a song, I shall not be moved. Some of you may know that one. It says, but, it's because I have set God before me, and because God is at my right hand, I shall be able to stand no matter what may come my way and what I might face. Whether it's a pandemic or a job loss or a disease, God will be there for us to go through it. We will never be alone. Even in death, God will be there with us. So when anxiety creeps in, Remember that you are not, that you will not be moved. You are solid in your belief, and you are a child of God. So, so remember this verse. Write it on an index card. Take it up to your mirror so every morning when you get up, you can see it and be reminded that I have set the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand. I shall not be moved. So that was my verse for this week. I found some other verses for you, for your mirror verses, I guess I'll call them. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." These, if you want to copy these and put them on the index cards, put them on your mirror. My wife does this. They are on our bathroom mirror, so she has different ones at different times throughout the months. So, and then some are up there all the time. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." 1 Peter 5:7 says, "Casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you." And Deuteronomy 31:6 says, "Be strong and of good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, he it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee." And Isaiah 26:3, it says, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee." And Philippians 4:7, it says, "And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus." I hope that this devotion has helped some of you. I hope these verses will be something that maybe you can use when you have those moments of anxiety, when they start to come on you, that you can pull these out and head it off before it gets too much in your way. Remember that God, if we will set God in front of us, as David did, God will be there for us. He will filter those things and help us to deal with each situation that we might face. I hope you have a good day, and that God will be there for you in every situation that you need. Thank you all. See you next time.